All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube every Monday and every Friday. Make sure you subscribe, helps the channel, and you get to find out when we have guests coming up. Speaking of guests, if you want to ask a question of one of my guests, or you just want to watch the interviews a week or two early, go down to my Patreon link in the description, click on that, and pick the appropriate tier, and you will be asking the guests the next questions. Now, speaking of asking questions, I get questions all the time about people that you want to see. And of course, most of the time it's Vito Bratta and Warren DeMartini and people that there's no chance in hell you're going to see anytime soon. But I get constant questions about the band Britney Fox. People want to know, where are the members of Britney Fox? What are they up to? Well, we have a member of Britney Fox. I don't know if he calls himself a former member. I don't know if there is a Britney Fox right now. I do know that for 30 years, he's been a member of Doro, obviously featuring Doro PESCH. They have a new live album coming out called Triumph and Agony Live. That'll be available September 24th. We'll have a link below for you to pre-order. And we'll talk to Johnny about Britney Fox, Doro, and more right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. All right, please welcome Johnny Dee.
Jason.
Johnny, I'm glad you can join me. And tell me where you're joining us from.
I am in the country of Deutschland. I'm in Germany, and I live in Fulda, which is about an hour from Frankfurt. If you look at a map of Germany, it's almost like dead center. So I'm literally 3 hours from all the big cities: Hamburg, Berlin, Cologne, Munich, and yeah.
Do you keep a home in the States too?
No, I don't. I moved here permanently about 3 years ago. Became a dad about 2.5 years ago, and I do have a place. I have a wonderful sister in Pennsylvania who puts me up whenever necessary and has done so in the past at many times. So that's always an option. But yeah, I'm here for the duration until until any further notice.
Yeah. So when lockdown began and all the things started going crazy, you were already in Germany.
Yeah. Yeah. It was weird. The whole timing of it all was quite lucky in a way. And I've been here for the birth of my son and not lost on the road somewhere. And I've been here pretty much for every day of his life so far, so it's, yeah, our last gig was in Germany before the lockdowns and the whole thing got crazy. It was in like March or April of 2020. Played with Saxon in Dusseldorf. Was a great gig, and then all hell broke loose. So I just came home here and stayed in.
And it's crazy because you see people who are doing interviews and press, February of 2020, you were ready to go. You had plans, you were, there was tour dates announced and you were ready to hit the road.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really crazy what we're going through at this point, and everybody's itching to get it out there and get back to normal. But yeah, it's going to take a while.
The world is insane, yet I get 100 emails each week asking, where's Britney Fox? So we can't, and this time we cannot disappoint. I want to make sure that we're pointing out right now on the screen is Doro PESCH, the band Doro, which you've been a member of for 30 years. And this is the reason why you're in Germany, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I joined so long ago. I should have made the move at that time, but there was not enough work in between the downtime for me here, and I just couldn't sort of fit myself in to Germany at that time. I mean, I love it here, and I always did, but to me, it just felt too alien at that time, and over the years, things got better, of course, but until there was a real reason to be here, or to stay here. I just had too much other work at home in the States, you know. So I would just go back and forth, and yeah, probably should have dedicated my time to working it here, but I just have more opportunities at home.
Is the rest of the band based out of Germany also?
Well, the current lineup, omitting the COVID era, is two Americans, Nick Douglas on bass, who joined the band actually 2 years before I did. So he's like 30. I think this is my 28th year. So he's actually at 30, and it's crazy. But two Americans. We have an Italian guitarist, Luca Princiotta. We have a Dutch guitarist, Bas Maas, and Doro, who is from Dusseldorf, German, half American because she's a green card holder and she loves America. But yeah, we're all over the place, and we usually have to fly in from all over to get together. But now my commutes are much shorter, so I'm actually digging that.
Yeah, absolutely. That definitely makes life a lot simpler, and especially during these times. We're going to get back to Doro. We're going to get to the live record, but we've got to give the people what they want. The world seems to want Britney Fox still. So I don't know if you know my track record, but I have reunited some people who can't get along, and so now I'm going to give my best attempt at Britney Fox. So I'm going to need to hear some facts, and then I'm going to give my best assessment. I think this one is going to be difficult, but just a couple of my credits. I reunited Brent Muscat and Tammy Down of Faster Pussycat. They hated each other. It was bitter. They were suing each other. And I got those guys together, and I got them on stage. And so that was one. Randy Piper and Chris Holmes from the band Wasp, they hated each other. They probably still hate each other. I got them to Vegas. We got them on stage. At one point, Chris Holmes said he was going to just push Randy off the stage if he got tired of him. But we still got it done. They performed. And then probably the biggest one I got, Phil Lewis and Tracy Guns. Those two hated each other. Boy, they had separate lineups. I'm not sure which was worse, but they were out there. They hate each other. Now they're on a love affair.
They're in a unit again. Yeah. So you're responsible for that.
So I got those guys back together too. We did it as a Christmas fundraiser for kids. I got them both to show up. They hadn't seen each other in quite some time, and now they're holding
making
hands.
Records again. Yeah, that's a trip. Yeah, they sound good too, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and so I've got quite the history. There's only a few times where I failed, but we're going to see. I was trying to work on Trickster lately, but they're having some internal problems. But Britney Fox, this is a good place to start. Now, I find that the fans of this genre of music are getting younger and younger. I mean, do you feel that way? New fans, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is a ton of people out there that are turning their kids on to this stuff, or have been, and that's a cool thing. And I did on the last Britney gigs we did back in like 2016, 17, we had quite a younger crowd coming out along with the old heads, you know, and that's awesome, because this stuff still gets played and it's still, breathing air. So I do really like to see that happening, and that's really cool.
I think there was a time when, if you were a younger person, you might this type of music and look wouldn't have been acceptable. Oh, no ways, no. But now, with most things, a certain amount of years goes by and it becomes sort of retro. And I can't believe how many people are discovering these bands through YouTube and Spotify. Yeah, it sucks that the artists aren't paid fairly. But boy, is exposure there. And the fact that we're talking about Britney Fox this many years later is a testimony to those things working. So, of course, though, there are some people who don't know the history. Maybe they just know Girl School or Long Way to Love. Week, maybe just from the videos. But so let's go back for those who might not know, let's go to about, well, pre-1988. You give us the quick version of how Britney Fox began.
Okay. Basically, Cinderella was one of the original bands in Philly, South Jersey, that got the most attention, had some of the best songs. I mean, they were a little bit ahead of the curve, and Bon Jovi had come to see them in a club that we were all playing when they were in town doing the second album. And John just was like, oh, these guys are amazing. They need to get signed and get a deal. And, you know, the rest was kind of history. But what happened in that little slice of time was that a stipulation of them getting that deal was that they had to dump two members. And they got rid of Michael Kelly Smith, Mike Shermick, and they got rid of Tony Destra. And those two guys were gigless. And here comes Dean Davidson along with, you know, he was basically making the transition from being a drummer in a band called World War III, which I ended up replacing him on drums in. And he said, you know, I'm going to be a front man. I'm going to write songs. Everybody kind of laughed at him. And then he kind of came out with some good tunes and good idea for a band. So he got Michael and Tony, and all of a sudden he had himself, you know, two members, ex-members of Cinderella when they were about to blow up. So that was the formation of Britney Fox, and then they added Billy Childs on bass, and that, you know, that's kind of where it went from there.
Yeah, so that's the very beginning. You know, Dean has a voice that's similar to Tom Kiefer. Did you guys ever feel like we're a lot like Cinderella at the time?
I think so. I mean, especially with Mike and Tony coming out of that band. I mean, they were, although Tom was writing, you know, the majority of the material, probably all of it. You do have these chemistries where a band has a sound because of the material, but of the way that it's being played by certain people. You know, they created the sound of that band together. So one can say, well, it was Tom and Eric, or one could say that, you know, Mike and Tony had something to do with that, which I really feel that they did initially. And so they ended up with Dean, who had no problem trying to follow in Tom's footsteps, you know what I mean? So he kind of crossed it between, say, Paul Stanley and Tom Kiefer. And the next thing you know, he had an automatic vibe with half of the band that, you know, we're talking about. And I think that Michael and Tony felt that, well, hey, we started that band together, so we deserve to kind of carry on that type of sound. Now, you know, some people argue that it was a ripoff or whatever, but it really was genuinely put together around those circumstances. So it had a little bit more of a lineage to it, you know, if you will.
Yeah. And, you know, around this time in Philly, it's an interesting scene. This is when you got Cinderella, you know, doing the Pat's cheesesteak commercials. And, you know, and you guys are part of that whole time. And
Yeah.
like you said, Bon Jovi comes around and sort of starts to grab up bands, you know, Cinderella first and, you know, later Skid Row out of Jersey. You know, everybody's sort of on that scene.
Yeah.
Tragically, Tony passes away in a car accident.
Yeah.
Obviously at a young age.
Yeah.
And they continue. They get a drummer named Adam West, of all things. You never forget Adam West.
Adam Ferrioli, actually, he was going by that name, but yeah, he's still out there kicking it.
And he was sort of temporary replacement, though, until they found somebody. Is that right?
I think, yeah. I mean, you get varied stories. I never really knew if it was, you know, if he had planned to stay the course or if they had actually told him that it wouldn't be a full-time thing. But I don't think anybody was really sure at that time. I think they just were kind of trying to keep things going, you know. And really, it ended up being another situation like the Cinderella thing, where they the label made the decision that they wanted to change drummers. So the band felt bad about it, but they had to, had to make that move.
I got to say, while we're on that subject of drummers and Cinderella, it's funny. So the label makes them make a decision, yet Fred Coury doesn't play on any Cinderella albums that I know of. What a bizarre thing.
I know, it really is bizarre, because the band worked really hard to find, Jeff and Fred, and then get into the studio, and it was like a whole different ball game, So Fred got kind of ripped off and didn't get to play on the first two records. God only knows why, because the dude obviously lays it down, and then if you listen to the third album, he just kicks ass all over it. So it's like, why couldn't they have just done that? But you have a big label, big producer, they want to do things the way they want to do it. They don't want to screw around waiting for a drummer to get it right sometimes, so they bring in a dude they know. And it's unfortunate, but it happens all the time, and some bands don't even discuss it or talk about it. They just make it happen without knowing,
Well, especially then, someone like Beau Hill was infamous for bringing in people, those first Warrant albums, and I've had those guys on and talked about it. I think Cinderella was a few people. I think on Long Cold Winter, even Cozy Powell played some of those drums.
Oh, yeah. Cozy did, and Denny Carmassi, and I think that was it for that one. But and later on,
I think it's a woman on the first record, right?
What's that?
I think it's a woman on the first record.
No, the name Jody, but it's a guy. Yeah, Jody Cortez, I believe, was a session guy or a well-known friend of Andy Johns, who probably did another couple of records with him and said, this guy can just get it done straight off the start. So let's do it and get it out there. So. Yeah.
And so you guys beginning as Britney Fox, you have to see all this going on because Cinderella's earlier. So you must be thinking, oh man, we do not want to go through that same kind of stuff. And also I think there's one of those things where Bon Jovi had their publishing, and I think there's one of those.
Yeah. There's all kinds of little stories that trail off, and nobody really knows exactly unless you talk to them now, and they're willing to talk about it. But one thing I always thought with Britney was that we got lucky in that sense, that we didn't have so much intrusion from other sources, you know what I mean? We never had to deal with other songwriters kind of writing us a hit or a song, or anybody influencing the image, really. That was an idea Dean had from the very beginning. We were lucky enough that, he said it's going to be, ruffled shirts and this and that, and, it goes along with the name. And so the label was just like, okay. Whereas some bands get signed and it's like, okay, what's the image going to be? Now we got to dress these guys up. We got to make a video that looks like this one. And so we were lucky in the sense that we didn't get too much, flack from the label, at least on the first album,
right.
That said, you guys should do this and do that. We pretty much did what we wanted. We played the songs exactly like they were in the demos, and we made a record on the cheap, and it did really well.
And it's still, you guys come out still early in that game. This is 1988 that the record comes out. So if the market isn't completely oversaturated yet, as come 90, you're going to get a million things. This record goes gold. That's a big thing to get. And I know you've said probably could have got to platinum had they left you guys on the road a little longer, and had maybe you got another single out of it.
Absolutely.
If you would have got, because the first three singles all did well. I know it also was a hard time for you guys as far as getting on tours. You were on a couple of those package tours, but maybe I know you've said it. Some of these times playing clubs, if you could have been on a doing more shows with Rat and Poison and these type of bands, then this record, because I believe it was sitting at 800,000 at some point.
Yeah, it
coming
was.
out.
It was right after Save the Week. It was at 800,000 and it just
Wow.
kind of stalled, you know. And we thought, why don't we, you know, put another rock tune out there, you know, and Goodbye to Jane or something just upbeat and just push it over the edge, you know. But yeah, the label decided we should come in off the road and start the second album, and that was just the beginning of the end. Really, it's unbelievable to look back on it from a you know, an outside perspective now, but it was just like that. If that one little thing would have changed and we stayed out, we may have gone platinum, and things could have been completely different, you know.
Yeah, I
From
think they would have been way different, and you would have had a little bit better say. It's interesting. I interview people every single day about these same kind of topics. These
yeah,
guys, these labels and things. Everyone thought they were a genius, you know, but a lot of people were kind of guessing and bluffing their way through, and had stupid ideas where to put their money and what, you know, rather than actually deal with things. And so they crank it out. They want another record by 1989, which is kind of fast. I mean, and so you guys get Boys in Heat. I know
yeah.
you're not really a fan of much of this.
Uh, I mean, I'm like I've said, I really just hated the title, and the cover is kind of, you know, it's kind of silly.
Mhm.
But you know, at that point, it was like we had all this success, and most artists, I think, with that success, could have really positioned themselves to get a little bit more credibility to do some things differently, but we still had to, you know, fight a bit. We had other titles for the album, and they didn't like them, and so it was like, oh, Dean just kind of piped out, you know, oh, what about Boys in Heat? And they were like, oh, that's amazing, you know, and we were all just like cringing because it was actually another band that he had. And, you know, it was just really kind of silly because I thought, all right, we already have the stereotypical look, the hair, the this and the that. And then let's not go too far over the edge with those kind of titles and stuff like that, because it really wasn't our thing, you know. So yeah, having said that, you know, it could have been different, but I do like a lot of the tunes on the record, and I like the fact that, you know, I was more of a band member at that time, and I kind of got to put a lot more input into my parts. A lot of the parts from the first album were a lot of Tony's
Right.
original ideas, and I wanted to stay true to that because they fit perfectly, and just kind of put my spin on it. But yeah, I think this record's great, heavy production and stuff, but I think it had a couple too many songs on it. It wasn't really as like succinct as the first one, you know.
Yeah. And so, what do you think is the problem? Because you get three singles off the first record that all did well and all got MTV airplay. This record, it's much tougher, you know. So, what do you think happened?
Well, personally, I think that because of the first album, you know, it was unusual because we say singles, but we never really were a singles band as far as charting on radio and stuff like that. We really had like some rock radio hits, but as far as big singles, we didn't have that big song like Heaven from Warrant, for example, or some of the, you know, other bands, our peers. We really had created this thing where we were an MTV band that sold almost 1 million records just from MTV play alone, and some radio, and obviously people buying, you know, the discs and stuff. But it literally was like, if you watched MTV, you knew who we were, and you probably had our record if you liked that kind of music. But when the second album came, the first single didn't really even do anything on MTV or on radio. So that was an immediate kind of like downer. it was not like a Long Way to Love, for example. I mean, it was kind of just like, okay, what are they doing now? Like, they don't wear those clothes anymore, and they're just, so everybody was kind of confused because, Dean refused to stick with what we had in the beginning, and there was just so many choices being made by so many different people that it was hard to kind of keep things on track. All the things I said about the first album being just like, we're doing what we were doing, and it just went out that way, to like now starting to second guess and, what should the production of the record be? Should we grow? Should we write this kind of song? And Dean was trying to like write, be more of a songwriter instead of just writing like anthemic. He wanted to touch a bigger audience and stuff. So it really just was, we were kind of like splintering off into all these things, and we were just like not really sure where we were going. So I think that vibe just came out with the album.
And so let's talk about that problem with Dean a little bit, because he's already working on another band on the side, right? His next band, I think the Black Eyed Susan, he already had those guys together and was writing music with them. So he was already planning. Do you think that it's his ego that this happens? And it's like, well, I don't have to be the quote unquote hair band guy anymore. I can just change it around.
Yeah, it was a combination of a lot of things, because we got out to, we got on the road with Poison and Rat and all these other, toured with Warrant for a bit, and Kicks, and all these people were kind of, yapping in his ear about certain, ways to do it. Now, I don't know who that was in particular, but, he just started to think that like, well, this band is kind of out of control now. I've lost control of my own thing, and I don't like that. So I want to regain control and do things my way instead of having to listen to, 3 other guys and a manager and a label. I'm just going to, but the songs he was writing while we were on tour with the first album were all these like, road songs. And then he started to kind of pick up the vibe of like the changing scene, the Black Crowes and the this and that, and the Stones. He started writing these like, more Stonesy kind of tunes and this and that, and road songs and this kind of thing. And so I think what he wanted to do was regain control of something. And he just literally said, well, you know what? Fuck this band. I'm going to you guys can have it. And I'm going to go do what I really want to do, which was like be something completely unlike what he had just said that he was for the last year and a half or so. And we were all just like, why would you do that? You know what I mean? It would be like Kiss coming out with makeup on the first album, and then on the second album wearing like, gym shorts and a basketball muscle shirt or something, and having afros. It's like, why, just stick with it. And but.
Well, and he obviously learned that if success is what you want, it didn't follow him. And you're fortunate to have a major label. You're fortunate to be on MTV at this point and to have a gold album. And to think that you can just go, that's why I think ego starts to get involved, like we said. Yeah. Just go and, I'm just going to continue it somewhere else. That doesn't usually happen.
He also felt that if, like I said, it was quite easy for the band to get the original deal. So he probably thought, well, if it was that easy once, I mean, it'll just be that again, And he did get quite a large deal quite easily, but it just didn't pan out the way he had kind of hoped, or the label for that matter.
You guys must have been shocked, and your label must have also been shocked, wondering, what do we do next?
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, it took us quite a while to get our feet back on the ground after that surprise, But, I think the label was pretty disappointed. But,
Yeah, and so you guys do decide to go at it again, continue. This is 1991, Bite Down Hard. At this point, Tommy Paris becomes the singer. Tommy lives out here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So I see him, from time to time. And so, and people like this record. Unfortunately, maybe this record comes out a little bit late, and then changing singers is always going to be a difficult thing.
Absolutely. It was hard for us to find a singer initially, and but we believed in, the core of the band. It wasn't like we almost had to prove that it wasn't just Dean's thing, and we were just some dopes who were playing stuff that what he claims was like, oh, I wrote all those drum parts and I wrote all the songs, which is fine, but it's like, why would you form a band if all you want to do is promote yourself? You know what I mean? Then just be a solo artist from the beginning, So it's kind of felt a bit abused to, think a guy, and then all of a sudden you kind of don't know who this person is anymore. So it got very, self-righteous about it. And, so we said, look, man, we know we got the stuff here. We know what's good. We know what songs would be great to do. We want to be heavier. We want to keep the spirit of Britney Fox alive. And let's just find a guy who can sing even better, actually. And we can, he can kill on the old songs, and we can move further, and grow a bit as a band. And that's kind of what we were going for.
Yeah. And I'm sure that your feeling, though, unfortunately, was that it was too late. The time was passing, that scene had a lifespan. Of course, you can't tell that until all of a sudden you see it change. And then you go, oh shit, we got something, and we've got something good, but there's no way MTV is going to play this. And radio and everything else has changed.
Yeah, it was tough because that was really a timing issue. I think, had that record not been under those, circumstances, which were kind of unbeatable for any of the bands, unless you were a band that sold, 10 million like Def Leppard, and then you came out with a record that sold like 3 million. That was still kind of a success. But for a band that barely went platinum to sell, even Boys in Heat, didn't even sell, I don't think it sold a third of what the first album did. So that was a sign where we were headed, unfortunately. Never really, recovered from that. And Bite Down Hard is still to this day a favorite of many hardcore fans, and myself included. But it is what it is. We've heard that story a billion times about the time, the rock scene at that moment,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as the dust settles and people go on, there's lots of different lineups of Britney Fox as the years goes on, but Tommy Paris becomes part of that, and he's singing with you guys. And this Bite Down Hard lineup does continue to play shows, and there's been a few of these resurgences of hard rock, and I hate the words hair metal, but that scene, metal scene, and so it happens a few times, and now we're in one of those. Again, it feels like. Listen, we have a pandemic right now, so everything's on hold. But the era of the Monsters of Rock cruise, I saw you with Doro on the cruise, and it's big. M3 Festival, all of things. And so, what a time for Britney Fox, because the bands that do the best at these events that I see are the ones that haven't been together in a long time.
Right.
People want, and you can only reunite so many bands. Sometimes you see bands and you go, "Holy shit, Taiketo!" Just the first one that came to my mind. But you go like, who knew? One, anyone was looking for them in the first place, and two, people like it. And some of these bands are great. I think the fun thing about these shows is going to see the bands that you might have missed the first time.
Right. Yeah. And that for the younger crowd that you said as well is a cool thing, that they get to see, bands. But I really think it comes down to just having fun. People that would, guys in these bands that can still just say, hey, man, this is an amazing opportunity that we can get back together and play, and not all this bickering and bullshit, all around it. It's just like literally like enjoy it while you can, have fun, and give the people a good time,
So I've been critical of Britney Fox occasionally about, sometimes people talk about the different lineups of bands. And when I saw it at one point, Billy Childs, the bass player, was the only member of the band. I was critical of it. I said that any band that only has a bass player is not worth seeing. I said it just sounds, for me, I'm not saying people don't have a right to make a living and those things. But for me, I'm not leaving the house. I've seen Britney Fox. I don't need to see the bass player from Britney Fox. And believe me, this is not the only case of this. There's lots of them where I look at I go, that's not for me. But here's my questions about that time.
Mm-hmm.
How did he have the rights to do it, and what happened?
So we had done one reunion with the Bite Down Hard lineup in like 2000 or so, and we discovered that we really, still had fans. It wasn't like you said, it wasn't really the time yet, but it was one of those surges, and but it was cool. I mean, it worked. We put out a live album, but we just got to the point where we said, look, we can't physically tour like we used to. It's not possible to get in a van and go play, maybe you get a good paying gig on a Friday and Saturday, but there's no, these stretches of long weeks and drives across the country. It was just not, not worth it for us. Yeah. So we had a little bit of a falling out because of that. Billy's attitude was, we can fucking play anywhere just as long as we get, paid. And Michael was of the belief that, I've got a small business going on at home. I'm teaching guitar. I don't want to leave for 3 weeks to play, 10 gigs or something and come home broke because we spent all the money on gas and food and getting across the country and back. So, which was the case at that time. You couldn't just fly out and do a cruise for a week, or fly out and do a festival for a day or two, or do a good paying weekend at the casino and stuff like that. It was just too early for that. So Billy wanted to tour, and everybody else was kind of like, eh. And that's what led him to say, well, somebody's got to do it. The name's sitting there. People want to hear it. And it's a waste. So basically he just kind of took it for himself and went out there and did it and didn't bother to ask anybody. He kind of called me after the fact and said, hey man, we're going out on tour. And I was like, really? When? Well, no, I got like a band already. And so I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? You can't do that. And we totally disagreed on it, but he did it anyway. And, went out and tried to bang his head against the wall for a few months, which he probably would say went perfectly great. And I would say that it was like you said, it was a complete waste of the band name. And I wouldn't have paid to see it either.
Who had the trademark?
Nobody at that time. Because
you had to go and register it?
Yeah. And he, it didn't exist because the band was inactive.
Right.
So it basically lapsed, and all the kind of legal shit just kind of fell by the wayside. And then when he decided to go do it himself, our ex-manager and Michael tried to fight him on it, and spent a shit ton of money, and he just like basically said, fuck you, I'm going to do it anyway. And there was no way to stop him at that time. And that's kind of where it stayed. I mean, nobody's ever really worked it out with him. even though we had gotten back, I got back together with them in 2016, and we tried to do it, do it right again with 3 members from Bite Down Hard. And Michael just kind of said, I don't want to tour. I'm cool if you guys want to replace me for tours, but if we're going to do records and stuff, we should do it as a band. And Billy just never really played fair. So that was really a shame.
Well, and in legal terms, this is called a race to the mark, and trademark is open. Someone's going to go and take a shot at it. And what you learn from the legal system is that just because you got there first does not mean you're entitled to the name. But it does make it difficult because the filing becomes a formality. And Billy probably had to say that he was using the name and that he was selling merchandise, even though he was not. And it's kind of automated. And then you just have it. And then it's up to someone to contest it. And as you said, that costs money. You then end up where lawyers are the only people making money. You're butting heads over a name that doesn't have that much value, especially at the time. Yeah. And so you get frustrated, and it sort of goes, and one person has it. Now let's talk about a future. Now we know that you guys are dysfunctional.
If you didn't know that.
It makes your real job at the Doro seems so normal. 30 years, we play music. I moved to Germany. I go out here, I go there. But in this case, let's figure out if there's any possibility of Britney Fox. Let's just start with the obvious, because I get the questions every day. Where is Dizzy Dean Davidson?
Yeah, I heard last that he's in Phoenix or somewhere in Arizona. Has no interest whatsoever in talking about the band or being in the band or doing anything remotely related to the band. And he's moved on. He's got other things happening. Obviously, it doesn't seem like he's doing anything musically. So that, to me, says, maybe he has moved on. Maybe he's into something completely different now. But I haven't talked. I actually kept in touch with him quite a bit through even the Billy days and all these kind of dysfunctional things that were happening. I would hear from Dean occasionally, and it was never really about. There was one time where I kind of was the middleman in a joint operation to get Billy and Dean to sit down together. And that lasted maybe like over a few beverages. And then the next day I didn't hear from him again. So it was like, he spewed all his stuff out that, like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it all. I got this lined up. I got that. I got this. I got that. All the songs are written. I got the clothes ready. My guitars are in the kit. I was like, dude, we haven't even played one note yet. Like, are we going backwards here again to the old day? So that was like, okay, he just wants to have control again. So it's like, it's not going to work, And I think Billy told him that, his idea of what kind of money we could make out there was sorely, overshooting what was reality. But, Billy was out there with no other members making probably not much. So probably, in reality, it would probably have been somewhere in the middle of those two things. But I don't know. I don't think Dean would really even discuss it, but you're welcome to give it a shot, because I would love to hear some more stories.
I tell people all the time, you want to find them, go into the white pages under Dizzy and look them up. Now we know Phoenix, we're getting closer. But I saw an interview with Billy that's not that old, maybe even the beginning of lockdown, and he tells your story slightly different. And I don't want to throw the guy under the bus, but he alludes to the idea that there could be a reunion. Maybe he's just telling, and doing his thing. But he tells that story that you told about how you guys were talking to him. He's made it sound like there's still a possibility that this could happen, and that. But your version of it does not sound that way.
Well, the sit down was quite a while ago. That was probably 10 years ago now. Um, but yeah, Billy's interview was pretty much like, I'm going to call Dean and try to get this happening. But it was like, well, maybe you should actually make the call and
Right.
then maybe do some interviews about what actually happened, But I think, yeah, I don't, I would never say never because I would be the first in line to want to do it again, but it's just that nobody's been able to convince Dean to this point, and it's certainly not going to be any of us from the band. It probably would have to come from the outside, somebody to just like, a couple slaps to the face and be like, dude, you're pushing 60. Like, do you want to give it a last go or just like, forget
Well,
about
that
it?
is the approach. The approach is that you're everyone's older, and yes, we didn't all get along, but you know what? Life is short. We're watching people drop left and right. Even people who seemed healthy, things are crazy.
Yeah.
And there is good money, but someone has to be realistic about the money that there is. And when I say good money, no one's getting rich, but I'm saying, you know what, to go on a cruise for 3 or 4 days isn't such a bad thing to do. My theory is that he's financially okay. A lot of people do these reunions because they have to.
Yeah.
I'm thinking he has some sort of business or something, or he's in a relationship, something, and he doesn't need this. Otherwise, maybe he'd be a little quicker to do it. Michael Kelly Smith also is semi.
MIA.
Yeah, although he did pop up and do one of these interviews also. It's a strange time that, you can just sit in your basement and talk to people.
Right.
And his is odd because I looked a little bit of it. First of all, they should have edited a little. It's like he's fumbling and he's looking around, and I'm not sure the guy was that big a fan who was interviewing, but that's what's happening now. Anyone can do this, and I'm not sure what his connection was to Michael Kelly Smith.
Right.
But so I think if there was a way to get the four of you guys into some kind of a room, and if there was a real offer, and maybe Dean understood that you don't really need all these costumes, you don't need all these things. You're going to fly in and you're going to fly out. You don't have to sit in a van with each other. You don't have to worry so much. Maybe, but it seems like he's laid low. He's threatened these little comebacks every now and then. In 2010, he claimed that he was going to have a Britney Fox. Was that he was going to do it himself?
That was when we sat down and tried to talk it out. I think he was done so much of this kind of Dean singer-songwriter thing, and it hadn't really panned out. So I think people around him were starting to tell him, look, dude, all anybody cares about is you being the singer in Britney Fox, and why don't you just own it up and go give it a shot, So he probably said, okay, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it on my terms. And that's kind of where he came into it to us and said, I got these songs all ready to go. It was just like, why don't we just get together and try to like work on it together, which we kind of, the reason why we stopped in the first place was because we should have given each other more leeway and stuff. So, I think that was his hint, and then it was over. Like as quick as it came, it was done. And he got fed up with people, I think he just like doesn't want to deal with people or any kind of feedback from fans. He doesn't seem to be able to handle negative feedback or any kind of.
Yeah, he has no social media.
Yeah, he blew it all up and just kind of like went underground. So I don't know if he could handle being around, being on a boat with 2,000 metal fans or whatever that just like want to talk to these people, because they love this shit. It's like, what is so bad about that? I'll talk and sign shit all day. I mean, it's better than digging fucking ditches or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like what we do.
For sure. And I know when you're out with Doro, you're still signing Britney Fox records. And
Yeah, man.
you
Everybody asks me all the time. In South America and Russia, I mean, everywhere that we've been, I get to sign stuff. I get people asking why we never come there, what's wrong with the band, why don't you guys do anything? And we're going to end up being one of those bands that just couldn't get their shit together, you know, which while you have the bands that are, you know, it's always been the bands that are willing to go to these different places or do these things, you know, get a record together, whether you think it's going to sell or not, just put it out there, you know, and those are the bands that people adhere to, and they kind of, you know, become, you know, they admire that and they want that stuff, you know, so just, that's why there's this small scene that just still exists of these bands that maybe couldn't even last in the 80s, but now they're able to because they have jobs. They don't need to fight over fucking 50 cents of publishing and shit like that. They can just do what they do, make music and have fun doing it. And that's really all most of us ask for.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to have to head out to Arizona. It's not too far from Las Vegas. I'm going to have to talk some sense into him.
Bring some weapons.
Yeah, I get you.
Because, I think he's stockpiling.
Yeah, I'll have to plan that more carefully. but you know what should be is we're going to play one show. That's what it should be. No one should be talking about records. No one should be talking about anything. We're going to play one show, and we're going to see how that one show goes, and it's going to do well. Guarantee it's going to be good. People are going to love it. Then you could talk about what else there is to do. Maybe re-record some of the old songs. You know, maybe put out a single. No one needs a full record right now. I'm not sure you guys could survive making a full record. But anyway, and I know for you, you must be thinking, 30 years of my life, I'm still talking about a band that can't get it together. Do you think that Billy will do it again? And would you do it with him?
I wouldn't put it past him. And I would like to continue with that band because of what's happening and because of the people that still want to hear it. And we're at a weird time, not, you know, because of Corona, but just because of what you were saying, where there's one member of a band or, you know, that it's just become the name, you know. This is like this kind of nostalgic thing that I was like experiencing when I was a kid. And my parents or older people were always going to see these like ancient bands that were like still playing. I mean, my sister just went to see Herman's Hermits the other day, and it's like that fucking band is still doing it, you know, with one maybe original member or whatever. But it's like that we're talking about 65 years or something.
They're great, by the way. I've seen it.
Okay, so there's your, you know, I mean, this is where we're at with the 80s bands, you know. We're kind of in that era now where it's like people just want to fucking hear the music, you know. They know it well. It's still played. It's almost like classic rock now, and you know, so put on a good show. So to answer that question, if it was a good band and if people believed in it and the music was believable and sounded good, you know, I think it should be allowed to exist, you know, because certain people don't want to be involved. I don't like the fact when bands, you know, ditch this guy. I always say it's like I have two parts of my brain. One is the young kid fan brain, and the other side is like the music veteran, bitter person, you know, that knows like all the shit. And it's like, you know, sometimes band lineups piss me off so bad, you know, because I'm a fan. I saw that band in the prime, you know, original lineup and whatnot. And then the other thing is, but they have to fucking make music. They have to make a living. So I understand that. So it's, you know.
Well, someone said to me once, what the fan wants isn't always what's best for the band. As a fan, we look from the outside and go, how come these bozos just can't get along? But until you get into the backstory, you realize that sometimes it's just not possible. In your case, I'm not sure it is, but Dean has become pretty reclusive. I'm not sure he's going to wake up and want to do it again. So we didn't really solve much. We know that the future is still unwritten. I'm going to dig through my white pages later today for Phoenix and see if I can get the big scoop that nobody thought that the world needed so bad. But you never know. We can make some hard rock history. I got to ask you, you're talking about being a fan. I've heard you say before you saw the band Angel.
Oh, and
yeah. So Angel, for those who don't know, is this mythical band. It's a real band, but there is no video of Angel. And I've worked with Frank Domino a ton of times here in Las Vegas, worked on records with him, shows. He's come and sang for the band I created, and he's a great guy. And I had him on. It's an amazing interview where he talks about it. They had the people who made HR Puff and stuff, Sid and Marty Krofft Productions, create their stage show. And very rarely do you find someone who's seen it. It sounds insane. They came down in these pods. And tell me what an Angel show was like.
It was unbelievable. If you speak to anybody that saw them at that time, they'd never forget it. I mean, it's like, it was like seeing Kiss or Alice Cooper, any kind of shock rock or really performance-oriented band. But I mean, just imagine a theater filled with pot smoke and a hologram talking angel head at the back of the stage. And then, these guys come out, roadies, as the lights are dimming, and they're building up these magical boxes, you would see David Copperfield or somebody use. And all about it, but this is what, experiencing this as a 13, 14-year-old kid, it was just mind-blowing, So the band basically appears magically on stage, is announced by the talking hologram, and then they run off the stage, and then as they're all done, they come together and just the music kicked fucking ass as well. So it wasn't just a show band. All dressed in white, phenomenal players, insane music, loud, bass heavy, keyboard driven, melodic rock. And just Barry Brandt is still to this day one of my favorite drummers of all time. He's never talked about by, the majority of the drum nerds or whatever, and that's a shame, but they're a fucking amazing band that had their own dysfunctional problems. When you look at their history, it's like, here we go again.
They're one of those lost bands, and it's so crazy that we can talk about a band that no one can actually point to a video of, or even rarely pictures of. So that's why I had to ask you, because they got sworn into the Magicians Union, that they wouldn't tell the secrets. Oh yeah, Frank told me that they wouldn't tell the secrets of the show. And then you have this major show. And I think my first question to Frank is, so why didn't this work? Why wasn't it bigger? And of course, the dysfunction. A few years back, I directed an award show here in Las Vegas. It was put on by a publication called Vegas Rocks Magazine. And they did Reunite Angel.
Oh, were you part of that? I did see some of that, man. That was really cool to see them all.
It was so cool. They didn't perform. I wish they would have.
Yeah.
Punky and Frank tour now as Angel. I think the other guys just didn't really want to do it. And like you said, it is different. And they are older. We're talking, you saw them when you were a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a long time ago, man, but it was so amazing. And I loved their records. I mean, it's one of those bands that I walked into the record store and I saw the cover of On Earth as It Is in Heaven. And I was just sold. It's one of the coolest fucking album covers ever. And I just dropped the needle on that thing, and it starts out with a fucking massive snare drum riff, and then it kicks into this, just hellacious, it wasn't heavenly sounding at all. It was just bombastic and killer. And one of those memories of discovering a band and actually just digging deeper and becoming a lifelong fan of.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked about it with us because, like you said, and we were both saying it's this mysterious thing, and when you find someone who's actually seen it and was influenced, you definitely got to talk about it. Here we are, Doro, PESCH, Warlock, Triumph, and Agony live. This is coming out in just a few days, depending on when people are watching this. We've got the link in the description so people can check this out. Tell me a little bit about this record.
Okay, so a few years ago, we did a short, not really a tour, but we did a bunch of select dates around the States and in Europe, celebrating the 30th anniversary of the classic album, Warlock's Triumph and Agony. And Doro invited Tommy Bolin, the guy that pretty much created a lot of these riffs and leads and music with Doro, not in writing, but his shredding is all over the album. And he was the guitar player at the time. And it's a bit of a mysterious record because it was, it was made and it was listed as a Warlock record. But if you really go dig deeper, which I don't know the whole story, and I'm in the band with her, and she just like only lets these little things out every now and then. But so we invited Tommy Bolin to come fill a spot on our stage with playing a lot of the original licks from the record, and we did the whole record in its entirety, which had never been done before. There was one or two songs that were never played live before, and it was really fun. And we recorded a couple of the shows. Most of this is coming from the Sweden Rock Festival, which is a great festival that's like so retro and hails all the stuff 80s. And it's cool because Sweden is like, if you want to see the US in 1987 or so, just go to Sweden sometime, and all the bands, kids that are looking like Motley Crue on the, Shout at the Devil and shit. It's just really wild, but it's super cool because there's a lot of killer bands coming out of Sweden. And that's Triumph and Agony live. It's basically and it's a killer package. I think there's 3 or 4 different versions of it. One of them has a replica stand-up of Doro and the Warlock, a cardboard cutout that has the record in like the belly or so, and really she makes some amazing packages for the fans. So that's going to be a treat for a lot of people. And that's probably most people's favorite Warlock or Doro album, if you were to ask him. So that'll be out soon.
Yeah. And so are there any plans to tour promote that?
Yeah, I mean, we were supposed to play M3 last year. We were supposed to do more of these sort of Triumph and Agony or Warlock type special gigs. We've had a European tour that's been pushed back 2 or 3 times already, and now it's sitting in November. And I'm hearing that, maybe that's not even going to be possible because Germany hasn't allowed any indoor concerts yet. Unlike the States. So, I mean, it's probably, it's just a shame because we would like to plan around this release. And obviously there's a record that we didn't even get to promote fully that was released about 1.5 years ago or so. And she's constantly putting stuff out, but, more power to her that she stays busy and just keeps it rolling because eventually when the live stuff does come back, we'll be very excited to hit the road again. And, right now it looks like a normal festival season in 2022, but, who can say?
Yeah,
we just hope really hard.
Yeah, we're looking at that great packaging right here. What a cool item, and so that's available. People should go into the description and pick that up. And it might be as close to getting live Doro for a minute as you've said. But it is amazing, though, that it's lasted so long. And just tell me what it's like working with Doro and just the organization in general.
It's at this point, it's very, like when I started with her, it was still this kind of 80s, everything done big budgets. She had a big manager, a Swiss guy who was really, quite brilliant in the whole thing, and telling her which way to go and do this and do that and all that. And but she had tried to branch out, and do some different stuff, and during all the grunge days and stuff like that, she was still able to keep stuff going in Germany and in other places, So we kind of scaled things down into the end of the 90s, and around 2000s we started to get out there and play in like all these amazing places. Some of the places that we went to, Doro had never even been to before, like Russia, and Japan, and maybe some of South America and some of places in Europe. I mean, we were going to Slovakia, Slovenia, Czech Republic, all these, Hungary, Eastern Bloc countries that bands didn't get to tour in, and these people were freaking starving for it, man. It's just amazing to go, to some place like Moscow or somewhere in Russia and play and just be like, like it's the 80s again almost. And they're hailing Doro because she was literally like a pinup girl, in the early 80s when things were really happening. One of the first real serious metal female singers. Now they're kind of like everywhere, but Doro was a pioneer in that. So it's been amazing for me to witness all of that. My first gigs with her were in front of huge crowds, and I was coming from America that was kind of like, a dead issue for like metal and rock, and still doing these killer gigs with her and seeing how she interacts with the crowd and learning to work with that or to support her from the drum kit. And like playing some ballads, most of the bands I was in, Britney or whatever, we had like power ballads, but not like really sensitive ballads, and doing that with her and taking things down dynamically and stuff. A lot of that stuff I had to learn while being in the band, and it's amazing because now it really all flows and it kind of fits together. We're just like a big family. I don't think anybody in this band has been here less than like 10 years or 12 or so. I think even the young guys, the new guys, have been here like 15 or 10 years, so.
So rare,
Yeah.
So rare. She could have easily used pickup bands, but the product is big, as you said, overseas, and it makes sense to keep everyone together, and the band becomes tight. And it's fortunate, here in America, we only know what you only know what you know.
Right.
But you don't realize how big a world it is and how much music has impacted people in these different places.
Oh yeah, man. A lot of the 80s bands never, bothered to go to Europe, maybe played a big festival or two, but never really put in the, slogging it out kind of thing in the clubs or whatever. But man, if you do that, come to Germany and play some gigs and go over really well, you'll come back here like forever. I mean, they're really loyal here, and a lot of bands come here and tour that can't even tour in their home country, because there's just such a killer bond between people. They really, once they love a band, they really like give their all. So it's really cool.
Yeah, you hear that with some of the bands like Firehouse. They go find a big following in Thailand.
Right.
All of a sudden, while the other bands in America were falling apart, they were getting bigger. So.
Yeah. It's really like you gotta, I always quote the Iron Maiden thing. I mean, those guys in the beginning went everywhere, and now look at they can still go everywhere and play stadiums in Brazil and go to, Poland or Russia or, anywhere and just kill because they were one of the bands that would go to the East before, the communism thing even fell. I mean, they were I did a tour with them in 87, 86 when I was in Wasted. We went to some Eastern Bloc countries like Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Poland, and they, going through borders with machine gun guards standing there, and they would just like hand out Maiden shirts, and they would get to go through the borders untouched or whatever. And because all these dudes were fans, you probably saw the Moscow Peace Festival when those guards were, giving their hats and things to musicians and stuff like that. I mean, it's really musical bonding all around the world. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But things have opened up so much more now, it's like everyone's pretty much going anywhere. But the more gigs you do, the more people you win over is always the better result.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you spending some time, and you got a family, you got a child to take care of, and this is, if things are going to be locked down, at least you have some time to watch your kids grow. And
it's a good time to be a dad. It worked out perfectly in that sense, but it's a blessing and a curse, to be unemployed for the most part. But we'll survive and hopefully thrive again.
Yes, absolutely. And so now I hope I gave everybody the closest answers I could to your Britney Fox questions. Johnny,
I think so, man.
He told you it doesn't seem likely, so don't ask me to interview Dean Davidson because I can't find them. But if I get to Phoenix, I'm gonna look him up. And
I'll be waiting on you, man. I'm counting on you.
I'll be. We're gonna have a Zoom meeting very soon.
All right, cool.
Thanks, Johnny. Enjoy the rest
of
it,
brother.
Nighttime for you. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Take care.